hope everyone's fully caffeinated after the coffee break. Welcome to my session. I'm here to talk about ecosystem diversity. This isn't my title, but I like it a lot, and maybe not for the reasons that you would imagine. So when I looked at the title, Dire Straits or Brave New World, when I hear Dire Straits, I think of the band. I'm a big fan. Brothers in Arms, superb. And when I see Brave New World, I think the Aldous Huxley novel from 1932 depicting a dystopian future of a techno-state environment. And so when I look at this, I'm happier with the Dire Straits. And as a small business owner, that's probably appropriate, and I'll come back to that again in a minute. So who are we? So my name is Paul Sutton. I'm the CEO of Software Radio Systems. And so we're a small European RAN software vendor, headquartered in Ireland with operations in Ireland, Spain, and Germany. Our background is in challenging network environments. So for about 10 years, we've been a small bootstrap company specializing in high performance, very, very challenging niche network deployments. So we have a lot of experience in air-to-ground scenarios. So for various types of different aircraft, we've deployed 2 nationwide air-to-ground networks in the US. We've demonstrated handover at Mach 1 for flight line testing for US government. We've a lot of experience in that area. Another domain we have a lot of experience in is in satellite. And so we have worked closely with AST Space Mobile for about 4 or 5 years now. AST, if you haven't heard of them, have developed a direct-to-mobile solution for low Earth orbit for both 4G and 5G. And so we've been their R&D partners, especially on the 4G part, for the past 4 years. AST have had the largest low Earth orbit communication satellite in space for the last 2 years. It launched in 2022. And this morning, they successfully launched their first commercial satellites, 5 Bluebird satellites, each of which is now the largest telecommunications satellite in low Earth orbit. And so we continue to work closely with AST. So we have a lot of experience in solving challenging problems, and we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And the key lesson that we've learned is that flexibility and adaptability is absolutely critical. So coming from the 4G environment, we've had to port our software solutions across a variety of different hardware platforms, from very small to very large. Interoperability with different radios is critical. The modularity of the software components in our RAN stack across layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 is absolutely critical. Clean interfaces, self-contained components, and the ability to mix and match different software components is absolutely key. And so coming from this background, Open RAN made perfect sense to us. So we're a new entrant into the Open RAN space as a RAN vendor. But everything that Open RAN stands for reflects what we've seen and our experiences in developing these very challenging niche custom-built network solutions, particularly for 4G. And so to a certain extent, we learned the hard way about the need for those requirements for 4G. When it came to 5G, we developed a completely new stack and built in that flexibility from the outset. So the ability to scale from very small systems, small as a Raspberry Pi, smaller for embedded solutions, all the way up to data centers and everything in between. The ability to break the stack across different interfaces, how to take our layer 1, run it on a variety of different hardware platforms, ARM, Intel, AMD, couple it to third-party layer 2, layer 3s, alternatively take our layer 2, layer 3 and couple it with a third-party layer 1 SoC. So all of this flexibility is exactly what Open RAN envisages. So as we've entered the Open RAN ecosystem, we've seen opportunities arising on a variety of different fronts. We've seen the availability of more commercial radio hardware, which we can integrate with and support different deployments. We've seen private cellular opportunities arising through new spectrum sharing regimes around the world. As a company, one of the things that makes us unique is that we have a foundation in open source software. And this is important for two particular reasons when I think about Open RAN. The first is that when you provide an open source solution, it needs to be self-contained with minimal external dependencies. And if you use a dual license business model, you need to make sure that those dependencies, the licensing of those dependencies is extremely clean in order to support that model. The second reason is that everything is in the open. So you need to be very disciplined in your claims about your solution because they can be fact-checked in real time. You must be very comfortable with public scrutiny. So looking at the Open RAN ecosystem and going back to having a preference for dire straits, one of the things I reflect on, and I'm sure many of you have seen the map of Open RAN published by Mavenir's John Baker. And so that ecosystem map currently shows 136 organizations. It shows a flourishing ecosystem with a huge number of new players, and we sit within the CUDU software category of that map. Together with us in that category are 30 organizations the last time I checked. On the surface, it looks like there's a wealth of diversity, but I see two major issues that I want to focus on. The first one is that there's not really as much diversity as it seems in that space. And the second is that the ecosystem is currently propped up by funding, not revenue. And so those are the two topics I want to focus on. When you look under the hood, you see that in reality, the players in this space are building on less than a handful of stack implementations, especially for layer 1. And many of those implementations are tied to specific hardware, and they're very inflexible. And for me, this is the cause of a lot of the problems we're seeing in Open RAN ecosystem at the moment, where challenges of cost and complexity are arising. And I believe it's tied to the fact that a lot of these solutions are very inflexible. And when I look at the ecosystem, I'm reminded of Warren Buffett's famous quote, that it's only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. And at the moment, the tide is in. There's significant government support for Open RAN. There are R&D projects, testbed deployments, a lot of interoperability testing, a lot of support for new entrants. And this is essential to encourage new entrants and to develop the ecosystem to foster it. But we must remember that at some point the tide will go out and those supports will disappear. And the training wheels will come off and the ecosystem players will have to survive in the wild. And at that point, in the commercial marketplace, it's going to be Darwinian. It's going to be survival of the fittest. It's going to be survival of the players who can adapt and adjust to the changing environment most effectively. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Stéphane Téral to come in and to discuss some of these points and more.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it resonates a lot, actually. This is music to my ears because this is actually what I said last year at the same summit on this stage. You know, I had a chart, not John Baker's chart. Actually, yes, I presented John Baker's chart saying it's mushrooming. And then I had another chart showing the consolidation, restructuring, bankruptcy, exit strategy. But this is, I mean, this is known as the, and you mentioned, you know, survival mode. I don't know if you know George Stigler, famous economist of 1957, who identified the what he called the survivorship principle, which is when you when a company cannot adapt its maximum efficiency of scale, it's over. Mm-hmm. So, and this is basically what's going on with the large vendors, Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung, Fujitsu, NEC. They have to adjust their cost structure such that in the long run, they'll still be there. Then you mentioned Mavenir. Mavenir is what I call the $1 billion experience because they just got another $75 million in the bank. So if you add that to the $900 $50,000 plus million, they already had $1 billion. So, and I know a lot of people in this room, but all over the world are scared, this is crazy. I'm saying, no, they have done this before, ladies and gentlemen, with IMS, and I should say RCS. They got a hell of a return on investment with that, and I cannot share all the data. So the point I'm making is that in this environment, there'll be losers and winners, as George Stigler identified by studying the US railway history of the 19th century. There was a gold rush and boom, consolidation, and only, the strongest survived. But what's different here is that while there is that consolidation going on, there is still innovation. And actually, it's great to have you here on board, coming from another world and saying, hey, wait a minute, we can actually participate in this ecosystem because, there must be a niche somewhere. And I think you're right. And it's interesting you mentioned that, this hardware is still, rigid. However, you did mention you have plenty of hardware, right? Which is interesting because I hear other people saying we don't have enough options, from the hardware players.
Yeah. And that's absolutely the key, is you've got to have that flexibility. So if you're a software vendor, you've got to be, I remember the arguments around inline versus look-aside acceleration, and as a software vendor, it seems strange to me because it's absolutely clear that you need to support both.
Yes.
You need to have that flexibility and adaptability to support the hardware that the customer wants to use.
Yeah, so you're just providing the software. So, it reminds me of Fluido. And I think the former Qualcomm engineers, right?
Yeah.
They had a different strategy. So he went to CommScope. CommScope is now at Enfenol, but anyway. So somebody mentioned Amerisoft. Are you doing similar things?
Similar things, yeah. We've known the Amerisoft team for a very long time, actually.
Oh, okay.
We get on very well with them. I'm a huge admirer of what Amerisoft has done. To be honest, and we use their test equipment extensively.
Oh, okay.
So one of the challenges I wanted to touch on was on the cost of test equipment for new entrants, and Amerisoft have done a fantastic job of lowering that cost and making that barrier a little bit lower for new entrants. I would say we're a little bit different in that we tend to focus more on flexibility and adaptability. So very much we support split 8 fronthaul. We also support split 7.2. We're very keen to support different types of hardware acceleration, which Amerisoft have been outspoken about not supporting in the past.
Yeah, that's right.
And we also break the stack in various different ways. So as I said, we have full layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3, but we provide layer 1 to some customers that patch it with their layer 2 and layer 3. We provide a DU, who one of our customers patches with their CU and combines. Alternatively, we have a customer to whom we provide layer 2 and layer 3, and they patch it on top of their L1 SoC. So we're a little bit more adaptable, a little bit more flexible, and we'll go after those niches.
Okay,
as I think about that Darwinian evolution.
Since you're talking about layer 1, I guess you are watching Intel
yes, very closely.
Carefully. Because we published a research note back in August, just after the earnings, saying what's next for Intel's next, and we say not that much actually. A big hole of $2.8 billion, last wheel of the cart. So where is this going?
Yeah, very good question. And if you're a software vendor and you're looking at what's happening with Intel and you're panicked, there's something wrong with your software approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. Qualcomm is interested. Okay. Oh, wow. We are reaching, the end already. So how do you see the future? You were saying, the dire strait, but it looks bright, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks bright. Yeah, it looks bright for people who are flexible enough. So thinking about the ecosystem and Darwinian evolution, I was thinking of ourselves as the cockroaches of this scenario, where you might not see us, but we're everywhere. We've been around for a long time. and we see the opportunities in that bright future.
Well, thank you for bringing the joy. So thank you very much. This is a brilliant finish.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone.